This is Work University, episode 35.
This is Work University, and I'm Annalisa Felix. This is where I interview people from various employment backgrounds and get the inside scoop on what their job is really like. If you're just getting into the workforce, or if you're curious about getting into something new, listen up. Hello, today we are talking with JSantana, who is a project manager for IT, meaning information technology. Hello, Jose, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great. Thank you for making time to talk to me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So basically, before we get into the subject of IT, what is a project manager? Can you tell us, just break it down?
Well, project manager is, or project management is a profession where you manage projects that are temporary with respect to their endeavor. They have a start and end, and you're the lead for that project, managing the multiple resources, whether it be people, whether it be finance, whether it be equipment, in order to reach a corporate objective or an objective in general.
So how long have you been a project manager?
I've been a project manager for over 20 years.
So you have a very good idea of how this works. So for example, do you work as a contractor, or are there project managers who work within a company as a full-time employee, or is it both?
It's both, all of the above. A project manager can be a consultant. They could be working on a contract basis until the project has been delivered, or they can be part of an organization, what's commonly referred as a project management office, or PMO. They can work as part of project management office and managing, multiple projects over the course of their career for a particular company.
So now you work in a particular niche, which is information technology. Can you give me an example of how this, from the very beginning, how you get the first knowledge of a project and then what happens next in sequence?
Well, for a project that is going to be assigned to me as the project manager, I would be working with the manager of the PMO, the project management office, where they will give me basic scope of work that needs to be accomplished for a project. And typically we'll start with a document that we call a project charter. Project charter will define what the scope of work is for the project, the resources that are to be allocated, the cost of the project, your budget, if you will, and also the timeline in which the project has to be delivered. Because what makes project management very unique from management in general, as it relates to just the multiple different industries and corporations in general, is that projects are a temporary endeavor, right, for a company. So you basically start with what are the requirements for this project that need to be achieved, and what is your success criteria. And typically that's captured in the document that we refer to as the project charter to get things started to enter into the planning phase for the project.
So what do you think is the most important from a bird's eye view for a project manager to come in and start with once they get the project chart? Then what?
Well, once you get the project charter, typically what you'll do is you assess who your team will be, who your teammates are going to be, and what resources you are going to need. And we say resources, but we're talking about human resources for the most part, that need to be a part of the team that is going to be necessary to gather in order to begin the project, to work the project, and to complete the project. So typically we'll have our first meeting, which we call a kickoff meeting, a project kickoff meeting. That's where we meet with the team for the first time. That's going to help you to get this project done. And you're going to go over the scope of work. You're going to go over the budget, perhaps, if that's applicable. And you're going to go over the timeline in which the project has to be completed. And then that's a process that goes from the kickoff meeting into more formal planning sessions, for which you begin to develop further the scope of work and develop a project schedule or a project plan. A project plan will be your blueprint for completing the project, hopefully on time, right, and within the scope of work that you were told at the very beginning of what needed to be completed as part of this project. So it all starts off with meeting a team in what we call a project kickoff meeting to start the planning of your project.
Okay, so you're given an end date. You need to achieve X by this date. Do they give you some kind of wiggle room? Because
Sure.
you're dealing with so many different people and, different things. It sounds like it's hard to achieve things by a date. Or are you pretty successful in doing that?
Well, it goes both ways. There are times where a date is mandated. For example, if you're in the financial services industry, you may have a regulatory date, right? That it's not even the company's date. It's part of what is imposed upon the company, from the regulatory bodies, right? That oversee the work that's done in the financial services. So sometimes the date is dictated, and what you end up having to do is work backwards from that date to define what are the milestones that you have to achieve, schedule milestones that have to be achieved in order to complete that project on that particular date. Other occasions, they may say to you, and they may be management that says, let me know how soon this project can be done, right, based on your efforts with respect to planning. So you go through the exercise of planning, maybe you get a couple of weeks, sometimes you get more time to write a project schedule, and then you take that end date that you feel you and the team can deliver that project, then to senior management to see if they're in agreement as to when that project should be delivered. So it's either or. Sometimes it's dictated and you got to work backwards from that date. And sometimes working backwards means you can't deliver everything within that scope of work that they would like, right? Sometimes, there's give and take, right? You could say, well, we can deliver X, Y, and Z by the first quarter and the next component by the following quarter, that sort of thing. So as a project manager, you have to be able to know how to plan and know how to communicate. And that's the two key components, in terms of being a good project manager. Know what your plan is, what your limitations are, what the risks are, what are the issues, right? And be able to, in a concise manner, convey that to senior management, right? Because you're their hands and feet on the ground, so to speak, for senior management to say, yes, we can do X, Y, and Z, and this is what it's going to take. Or we can't make it on this date. Here are the reasons why, but we can do it on this day. And so you go back and forth. And, again, one of the qualities of a good project manager, planning, communication, right, and also negotiation.
As a project manager, then, if you're on your project and then you've had your meeting, you discussed your plan with your team or your heads of the team. Now, I'm sure there are different tiers of different groups of teams that have to provide their project to make sure that ultimately the entire project happens. Do you put your hand in all of those different pieces too, or are you only reliant on the results of the managers reporting up to you, yes, this is done, or do you get down there and do you see it for yourself?
Well, it all depends on the project. Sometimes you're on an island in terms of the project that you're managing. There are no what we call external dependencies, right, that you are able to control and manage the full scope of the project. There are other occasions where you have external dependencies in your project, right, and you have to work what they call cross-functional teams, right? So if I'm in IT and I am leading the project to build a new system, right, to manage customer account information, I may need to be able to work with folks in finance or accounting, right? Those are other departments, right? So those are, across the organization. I may need to partner with them as well and understand what their requirements are for my project, or if they have a separate project that I am dependent on, right? It's something that they may be developing, right? We need to be able to connect the dots between both projects, and that involves, a lot of communication, a lot of information and data that is exchanged between your team and those teams that are external to the project that become dependencies for your project to be successful.
Okay, so let's say that things are not going on time or on budget. Is it safe to say that the stuff rolls uphill?
For sure. the project manager is accountable, right, to senior management. And, I remember working with a gentleman many years ago, and we were starting to plan out a project that he was a key member of. And his motto was, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, right? So in other words, nothing goes perfectly according to plan. I mean, we would love to have a crystal ball and be able to plan everything out and everything goes perfectly to plan. Quite frankly, many times, oftentimes, it is the opposite, right? I could even say that every time it's the opposite, right? Mm-hmm. Not everything goes according to plan, right? So a project manager has to know how to adjust, how to adapt, and also assess how these changes that have taken place that you didn't plan for impact your plan, number one, and secondly, be able to articulate the impact, right, of things that didn't go as well as planned or issues that came up to the powers that be, to senior management, so that they can understand, okay, X, Y, and Z just happened. A vendor we were depending on, they were supposed to get us the servers on Friday, and now it's going to be 2 weeks from Friday. And this has now impacted the project schedule by 2 weeks, and here's your new end date. You have to be able to articulate the impact to your plan, to your schedule, to your what we call stakeholders. Project stakeholders are folks or anyone that has an interest in the project that you are delivering. So a stakeholder can be a director, it could be a manager, it could be a vice president. It could be anyone that is waiting for that project to be completed because they have an interest in that project being done.
Okay, so it sounds like the only thing that you can rely on is the end result. How you get there is probably going to change in so many different ways, but as long as you get to the end result, that's why you're there. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, there you go. That sums it up. So tell me how you got there. Did you always know that this is something you wanted to do? Did you always have an interest in running projects?
No, I never even knew of the profession. I kind of fell into it. Early in my career, I was working for a not-for-profit, and I had some downtime, and I started to learn how to create databases and reports using Microsoft Access. So I started to learn how to do that, and next thing you know, I'm developing reports and databases and what have you for my department. I started to do it for other departments as well. I came across a gentleman that left that not-for-profit to go work for an IT firm on a project at Citibank, right, to roll out the latest operating system software at the time. And we had stayed in touch, and he needed someone, and he brought me in, and he interviewed me, and he knew my experience at the time was as an administrative assistant as this not-for-profit, but he liked my organizational skills, my communication skills, and he gave me an opportunity to work for him and the team as a project coordinator, right? So to get to a project manager, you could be a project coordinator, a senior project coordinator, junior project coordinator, and then a project manager. So I started as a project coordinator, helping the desktop team roll out the new operating system for Citibank many years ago. And from that, I started to develop the skills of a project manager, right? And I started to apply those skills there, and I just started to increase my knowledge on project management, and became a project manager a couple of years later. But I tell you one thing that did help me out in that journey when I first started was that I discovered an organization called the Project Management Institute, and they have a website called that is PMI.org. And that's an organization that teaches and the fundamentals of project management. I met a gentleman that was certified by that organization. He had what they call a PMP, or Project Management Professional Certification, and he was more senior. So he had mentored me. He started to mentor me as a young project manager. So I went then to start studying formally project management through this organization. They have their own text that they refer to as the PMBOK, or the Project Management Book of Knowledge, that you can even order on Amazon. And it breaks down project management to a science. And how do you initiate a project? How do you plan it? what's the execution phase of a project, and how to properly close out a project. So I started to learn those fundamentals and eventually became certified as a project manager. I have my PMP credential. And having that foundation that in terms of knowledge of the project management, methodology, right? Because project management has has a number of methodologies that you can use. And just doing that and getting more experience, I started to grow in the profession, and here we are 20 years later.
So it looks like project management found you.
Oh, I love it. You have to enjoy what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's important, especially with project management. As I said earlier, everything doesn't work out according to plan.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to have the temperament, the personality to adjust, to communicate, stay calm in the midst of the storm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because projects that you're delivering have a monetary value to a firm.
Yeah.
Right? It's not because we have nothing to do. It's that there's a monetary value, whether it be a project you're delivering to bring in more customers, bring in more revenue, add more functionality, in my case in IT, to a system to keep your customers, or whatever the case may be. They're important. There is something of value that is being delivered. And, you have to have the temperament, you have to have the patience, you have to be able to have communication skills, you have to be able to learn as you go, right? Because you're always learning. And, and you have to enjoy the ride along the way. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, okay, then it becomes work. Someone said if you enjoy what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. Right. And that's true. I really believe in that.
So if somebody came to you asking, okay, I do want to get into project management, because it sounds like people are led there because they are working on different things, but then now that you found the PMI Institute, you were on your way to, this is what I'm doing now. I'm going to be certified. Right. That's my career now. I do projects. I head projects, and I make things happen, basically. So right. What advice would you give to somebody who is thinking about, getting a PMP or making this their career? What advice would you give that person?
I would say you need to first take stock of yourself and ask yourself, the following questions about yourself. Do you enjoy working with people? Do you like to solve problems? Are you comfortable with communicating to others? And do you like challenges, right? Because I could work on one project today and work on the same endeavor, if you will, a year from now, and I'll have completely different challenges, right? Mm-hmm. So no project is the same, and that's something that I enjoy, going to work to solve problems, to embrace new challenges, and because in the process you're developing new skills. Every time that you're able to, overcome and work through these challenges, you're developing your skill and you're growing as a professional. So that's the first thing I would ask. If you could say yes to those questions, then you're already, going down the right path. Now, what I like about project management is that I work in IT, right, technology, but you may like the medical field, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can be a project manager in the medical field, right? You can work for a hospital, and be a project manager. Some people that like construction, right? Somebody's got to guide, and manage all of those projects, right, to build a building, so to speak, right? In that example, right? So there are many industries that you could apply project management skills to. So that's another thing that I do really appreciate about the profession, right? That it can find a place for almost, generally speaking, right? You can find a place for everyone, right? In terms of project management, if you could say yes to those 4 questions that I just presented a moment ago, in my opinion.
Tell me where you can be reached if anybody has any questions about becoming a project manager.
Well, my email address is JSantana@thinkitpm.com. You can feel free to send me an email with any questions you may have. I do have a website. It's www.thinkitprojectmanagement.com. I know it's long, but that's the website address. I do even offer a course on, the very basics of IT project management that I'm pretty proud of, and it's available there as well if anyone is interested.
Thank you so much, Jose, for giving us a look at what it's like to become a PM or a project manager, and actually learned a few things about it, because I picked up right now that there's a few different levels, and then there's certification, and then there are, different niches to get into. So I learned a lot. Thank you so much, Jose.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me once again.
Thank you for listening. I hope you liked this episode. If you have a particular job you'd like me to look into, send me an email at workuniversityforyou@gmail.com. That's workuniversity, the number 4, the letter U, @gmail.com. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.